Hi, today I'll be creating the card that is shaped like a hobbit house or a hobbit hole, and I'm going to use some dice to build it. This project is also a part of a blog hop, so there is a giveaway on my blog. Make sure to visit it. I'll put a link down below in the video description. Let's get started and I'll show you exactly how this card was made. I'm going to use some dice from the new collection by Spellbinders called Wine Country, designed by Stacy Karen. The entire collection is all about wine and grapevines, but I'm going to repurpose those dice to create something completely different. The project was inspired by this die and stamp set called Barrel of Sentiments. So this is actually a barrel viewed from above, but my first thought was it's a hobbit door, and I decided to stick to that idea. I have pre-made a 5x7 card base out of watercolor paper. Now I am coloring the front of the card using fossilized amber Distress Oxide ink. Then I'm going to darken up the edges using Vintage Photo. The paper I'm using is by Canson. It's 140 pounds. Because I need to create an old wall, I'm going for a distressed look. That's why I decided to splatter some water, and then I'm blotting it up with a paper napkin. I'm also going to add some brown splats, so I'm using a Distress Oxide Vintage Photo again. After the ink is completely dry, I'm going to do some embossing. I'll be using the Brick Texture Embossing folder by Sizzix. That's the one I'm using all the time. I'm inking up one side of the folder with the Vintage Photo Distress Oxide ink. The folder takes up the ink quite well, by the way. Then I'm opening up the card base and placing it inside the folder, making sure I'm only going to emboss the front of the card base. Then I'm closing up the folder and sending it through the die cut machine. This is the great way to add both color and texture. I have re-inked the folder to emboss the rest of the card front. You will see that the folder also created a vertical brown line, but this is exactly what we need for this particular project. You'll see it later. Now I'm placing my card base onto the cutting mat, and I'm going to make a cut along that brown vertical line. The cut should be 1.5 inches long. Then I'm going to use my scissors to trim off the top right corner of the card completely. Now I'm going to create my front image, which is the door, so I'm inking up a piece of watercolor paper with brushed corduroy distress ink. I'm always using brushed corduroy for old wood or old boards. After the ink is dry, I'm placing the dice on top of the paper, securing them with the tape and sending them through the machine. Those dies are also going to create a debossed wood grain pattern, and you don't have to emboss them to get it. Die cutting is just enough. Then I'm going to rub on some ground espresso distress ink onto the paper with my finger. It will make your hands dirty, of course, but this way the ink will only be applied to the raised areas, and it's going to bring forth that pattern. To attach this ring to the card front, I'm going to use some mounting tape. After you remove all the liners, it becomes pliable and you can attach it to the curved surfaces. Then I'm going to stick that ring to the left side of the card base. Then I realized that I want a green door instead of the brown one, so I used Shabby shutters and peeled paint distress inks to color it. To create a doorknob you can use a brad, but I have decided to use this little thing. I don't know what it is. I found it on the floor and I picked it up because I thought it was looking like a doorknob. If you know what it is, please let me know. Anyway, I attached the door with a hot glue, and now I'm applying some double-sided tape and attaching the door itself to the card front. To make some door steps, I'll need a piece of cardstock that is 3.5 by 1 1/8 inches, and I have colored it using hickory smoke and walnut stain inks. I want to make it look a bit like slate. Then I have placed this paper strip onto the scoring board, and I'm scoring it at the following marks: 1/8 of an inch, 3/8, 1/2 an inch, 3/4 of an inch, and 7/8. The watercolor paper is quite thick, so you might want to go over each line several times. Then I'm going to fold up everything zigzag-wise. Again, I have to smooth out the folds with a bone folder because the paper is thick. And this is what it looks like, a lot like stairs. To make it look even more like stairs, I'm centering the strip of paper on the grid, and I'm making pencil marks at 1 inch from the center. Then I'm going to divide the remaining space in half at each side. Then I'm going to trim off the excess cardstock with the scissors. It all might sound a bit complicated, but once you start doing it, you'll realize how easy it is. I'm attaching the stairs to the card front with the hot glue, and I am aligning it with the bottom line of the card base. Hot glue is perfect for sticking dimensional pieces like this one. The next die I'm going to use is this barrel. It's from the set called Wine Charms. The paper is colored with brushed corduroy, and now I'm going to die cut and emboss this die. And before I release the die cut from the die, I'm applying some black ink through the die, using it as a stencil. So this is the result, and for this project I'm going to need 2 of those barrels. I will be repurposing this barrel die to create the awnings above the door and above the window. I'm cutting off the side of the barrel, following one of the debossed lines that denote the boards. I also made the barrel rings kind of stick out a little bit, but that is not necessary. I'm cutting off the other side of the barrel the same way. This mid part is waste. Then I'm going to cut one of those barrel sides in half. Then I am applying a little bit of liquid glue at both ends of the little arch and sticking those 2 small pieces to it, just to make this arch a little bit bigger. The second small arch is just the side of the barrel. Now I am applying some water onto the grape leaf, and then I'm going to blot it out with a paper napkin to remove some of the ink. Then I'm coloring the leaf and the feeler with peeled paint distress marker. This gorgeous die is called Vineyard Wine Bottle Tag, and it has the matching label and matching sentiments to go with it. Then you are just folding the ring outwards along those little score lines and putting it onto the wine bottle. This is what this tag is supposed to do, but I'm going to use it in a completely different way. I have die cut and embossed 2 tags out of watercolor paper, and now I'm going to color them. I'm going to use distress markers, but any medium will do. I'm starting by coloring the whole tag except the ring with Shabby shutters, and then I'm adding the darker color, which is peeled paint. I'm applying peeled paint in some areas and then blending it out with Shabby shutters. To color the grapes, I'm going to use the craft nib by Ranger. It's the felt nib, similar to those that are used on markers. I'm just picking up some of the ink from the pad and rubbing it onto the grapes. The ink color is Seedless Preserves. I'm coloring the woven ring with brushed corduroy distress marker. I only have to do it to one of the tags. I'm rubbing on some walnut stain distress ink onto the die cut to reveal the texture. I have also die cut, embossed and colored 3 of those grapevine flourishes from another wine bottle tag set called Wine Glass. I'm also gonna be needing 4 of those elongated die cuts that look like curtain rods, and the die itself is from the set called Framed Charms. I'm going to turn those curtain rods into pillars, so I'm applying some liquid glue and sticking them at the edges of the card as well as along that vertical brown line. Then with the scissors I'm trimming off everything that hangs off the top as well as the bottom of the card. I'm cutting this tag in half. I'm only going to leave the grapevines, so I'm trimming off all those pieces of the frame that are peeking out here and there. Then I'm just putting those vines on top of the awning, just kind of twining them around, and then I'm going to secure them with a bit of the liquid glue. Then I'm cutting out more pieces of those vines, and I'm also adding them to the awning. For instance, those little leaves are going to cover up this seam where 2 pieces are connected. Then I'm also adding more vines. You can add as much or as little as you want to. I'm going to repeat the same process for the smaller arch. I keep securing the vines with the liquid glue. Then I'm applying some liquid glue along the arch at the wrong side and I'm sticking it to the top of the card. Then I'm also attaching the smaller arch that is supposed to go above the window, and then I'm going to show you how I made the window itself. I'm going to bring back that tag and I'm trimming off everything that I don't need, only leaving a woven ring and a couple of vines above it. Then I'm taking one remaining curtain rod and I'm trimming it and attaching it at the wrong side of the window, crisscross-wise. I'm using Ranger Multimedia Matte as a glue because it works with paper as well as with other materials that I'm going to use. So I'm applying some glue around the window and I'm going to stick a piece of acetate, followed by a piece of vellum, followed by a piece of dark cardstock. I'm attaching the window to the card front with a double-sided tape. I'm also going to attach one additional grapevine on top of the window to make it look more natural and not so symmetrical. As a finishing touch, I'm going to take my craft paper and a black pen and I'm going to write "No admittance except on party business." It's exactly how it goes in the book, and I believe it's a great sentiment for any birthday card as well as the birthday invitation. Then with the scissors I'm going to cut around the sentiment, And I'm going to distress this little piece of paper by curling up the edges, and I'm also creating little tears and curling up the paper around them as well. I will be sticking this piece of paper to the door with the liquid glue, and that is going to finish my card for today. You can easily create a simplified version of this card by just sticking the door onto the brick card base and adding a sentiment, but I just wanted to show you the hardest way to do it. Don't forget to visit my blog and participate to the giveaway. Thank you so much for watching. That was a longer video, but I really hope you enjoyed. Have a fantastic day, and I hope to see you again really soon.